Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for the virtual town hall for Stevenson Memorial Hospital and the Stevenson Memorial Hospital Foundation. I'm Rachel O'Gork with Corporate Communications at the hospital, and we thought this was a really great time to provide an update to the community. Certainly there's so much going on right now. We're in wave 3 of the COVID-19 pandemic. We do have a redevelopment update for you, and we wanted to give the community an opportunity to be able to ask questions as well. Before I hand it over and introduce Jody Levac, our President and CEO, I just wanted to go over a few things. If everyone could make sure that they are on mute throughout the presentation, we'd really appreciate it, just to minimize any background noise. There will be a question and answer period after the presentation. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can use the chat function. There's a little speak button at the very top of your screen. You can use that to type in a question, and we will address it at the end of the presentation. We will be starting the question and answer period with some questions that have been pre-submitted, and then we'll move to the questions that are in the chat section. This event it will be recorded as well, just to let you know, and it will be shared after the event. And as this is a virtual event, we hope that there won't be any technical issues. If there are, please bear with us, and we're prepared to deal with that when the time comes, but we're hoping everything will run very smoothly this evening. So thank you very much for joining us. I'd now like to pass it over to Jody Levac, our President and CEO.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. Yeah, these virtual town halls certainly aren't like gathering at a community function where I can see people. I do appreciate if people show their faces on video, because I can see whether you're smiling or frowning or if I'm not making sense. So my goal this evening, first of all, my very first goal is to welcome you to our town hall. On behalf of my board of directors, and I see our chair of the board, John Murray, on. I see our chair of redevelopment, Wendy Fairley's on. I think I saw Jan Tweedy and Darlene Blendick, who's on our foundation, was on our board. I see some of our former board members, and Paul Edmonds is also, I saw his face for briefly. If I miss any other board members, I apologize. On behalf of my senior team, Carrie Jeffries, our Chief Nursing Executive, Bill By, our Chief Financial Information Officer, and our fearless Chief of Staff, Dr. Barry Nathanson, welcome. Welcome to our town hall and welcome to our forum. And I'm looking forward to taking you through this evening an update on redevelopment. I'm going to introduce our guests, Melanie McLean and Ted Vandevis, in a bit, but I wanted to set the tone and set the agenda early. We've got lots of material to cover. I wanted to give you a sense of what we're doing here at Stevenson in the face of this pandemic. You know, yesterday in the province of Ontario, we had 790 patients admitted to critical care ICU beds and 2,350 patients in medical surgical beds across the province of Ontario. By mid-May, those numbers are going to stagger in the sense that we will be faced with 1,200 people in ICU and 3,279 inpatients across the province. Our hospital systems are facing tremendous challenge and pressures. And the Stevenson team here is in the midst of it. And I felt it was important that the town understand and the community understand what we're trying to do here for a community hospital, which I think is mighty. I want to talk about COVID burden and capacity. I want to share with the community what we're doing to help in this pandemic and to help our community. I also need to talk about hospital redevelopment. And then I'm going to turn it over to our foundation to talk a little bit about the steps going forward. And I think you're really going to enjoy our Melody and Dr. Ted's discussion. So if we can move to the next slide, please. Before I begin, I always want to thank our community. You know, our nurses and physicians are inspired. We had drive-bys, we had local businesses come by. We've had so much outpouring of affection and love for people who put their lives on the line in this pandemic. And for that, I am, on behalf of the staff, I am truly grateful to this community. I'm privileged to be the CEO here, and it would be amiss for me not to thank what a wonderful, supportive community we've had going through this pandemic. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about me, for those who don't know me. I came here to Stevenson in 2014. When I came here, we had a pre-capital submission that had just been submitted. It hadn't been signed off. And I've been leading the charge to try to get this hospital redeveloped since my arrival. You know, we started with, I think there was 86 physicians on staff. We now have 118 physicians on staff. I've got some of the best leadership folks with Carrie Jeffries and Bill By and Barry Nathanson I've ever worked in my career with. These are incredibly dedicated people, along with a very passionate board that really wants to see the best for this community. So I've got really good people around me, and because of them, I'm better. I come with a background. I've been in healthcare over 30 years, getting more to like 35 years. I've worked in Sudbury, Timmins, Bracebridge, Parry Sound, all Huntsville hospitals. I've worked all over the province. But I am most delighted and most inspired by coming here to Stevenson. I came from South Lake Regional Health Center. I was the director of mental health and the officer in charge of psychiatry. And for those who don't know my educational background, I got lots of degrees, lots of money spent on education, and I have a doctorate degree in health administration from Arizona. And I'm a member of the Canadian College of Healthcare Executives. I'd like to later, I can't wait for you guys to listen to our interim executive director, Melanie McLean. She's been a member of our foundation for 5 years, and she's really been a driving force behind the Transforming Stevenson and Because of You We Can campaign. You're going to hear from her this evening. And then you're going to get to hear from Dr. Ted. He's such an inspiring guy. He's a retired CEO of the Electrical Safety and Consulting Company, local fella, but really, really bright, smart guy. And he was appointed when Stevenson was in trouble. He was the inaugural chair that took us out of supervision under Mark Rochon. And he's really come back out of retirement, I guess you could say, to help with our Because I Can, I'm In initiative. And you're going to hear more from him this evening, and I think you'll find him quite inspiring. So I look forward to introducing them. Next slide, please. So what's happening here at Stevenson with the COVID burden? So wave 3 began about 2 weeks ago. And for those of you who follow me on my Twitter account, you've seen that we have been averaging about 6 COVID folks in our building. We have a high acuity unit, which has 4 beds, and for the most part, they've been full. And we've been managing COVID burden in our level 2 ICU. The other patients have been in medicine, and those numbers have fluctuated at times to some pretty worrisome numbers. We have people who are admitted in inpatients and in our acute facility. We have people in our high acuity unit, and then we have more folks coming in through the doors of Emerge. Our staff here have been unbelievably dedicated at making sure we can take care of COVID burden. And I've just been so inspired. You need to know how hard these nurses and the whole team here at Stevenson is working to make arrangements to accommodate. When you need us, we're going to be here for you. And we have done a lot of planning and preparatory work to make sure that we can manage the waves that are coming of folks that may need us through this COVID. We've suspended all our elective surgeries. And in that, I've had to redeploy our peri-op and surgical nurses to other parts of the building to make sure we have the health human resources, the HHR, that's going to be so needed as we see continued influx of COVID burden. We are upstaffing. I call it upstaffing as much this week. I give full credit to Mary Beth Hennon and Carrie Jeffries, who are leading that charge, along with Bill By, who's increasing EVS even today. I just saw an email before I came on the town hall. We're really trying to anticipate being there for you when you need us. And to let you know, the pressure is on across all of Ontario. There's been lots of movement from what's called the GTA IMS table. That is a table tasked by Dr. Andrew Baker to help share COVID burden across Ontario hospitals. And we have put up our hand to say that we will help. We took 2 patients last week from the GTA IMS table, and we are putting our hands up to make sure that nobody in the province if we've got resources and we can help save your life, we're going to do that. And proud to say that our team is up for the task and the challenge. Next slide, please. This is a massive accomplishment for a small community hospital. The community can be really proud that we opened up a level 2 ICU, a high acuity unit, we call it. And that's 4 beds. And it is state of the art in a 1964 building. I'm really quite impressed with what we've been able to do. It was a foreshadowing of our redevelopment, what we really want to bring to this community around proper infrastructure that matches the high quality nursing care we have here at Stevenson. Really, I wanted to have critical care services close to home. It was painful watching the amount of families that would have to leave Alliston to go to other hospitals. Not that these aren't great hospitals, but the team here felt we could really provide high acuity care here closer to home. and less transportation and burden for families. And our first patient was admitted in February of this year. And in the process of that, we brought on full-time respiratory therapists 24/7 around the clock. And for those of you who pay attention to the importance of intubation and airway management, respiratory therapy is a critical service that we need to have here at Stevenson, both for obstetrics and onwards, but especially during COVID. Next slide, please. The other thing we've done, and I don't know if it shows on your computer screen at home, but you can look up in the top right, you'll see the vintage medical green tile that when I came here, that is in our trauma room. As much as I like vintage things, it's not modern medicine for trauma. And over the course of my time here, we are seeing increased motor vehicle accidents. We're having people who come up here from the GTA and have recreational properties up here. So the amount of accidents we're seeing has been on the increase. And we really needed to modernize that trauma room. It could not wait for a redevelopment. So funds, again, from community members. It's our community that stepped up and helped us be able to put this together for our ED team. And down below, you'll see the new trauma room, which is modernized. The green medical tile's gone. We've got new fixtures, brand new ventilation, and proper air exchange flow in that trauma room. Opaque glass doors to increase confidentiality and privacy, because these are the most challenging critical patients. And it's part of our commitment to this community that we want to update this facility today. The need is now, while we continue to challenge the process of getting a redeveloped facility here at Stevenson. Next slide, please. You know, last April when the pandemic broke, I got a call from the ministry saying, Jody, you know, we're going to have to figure out swabbing and surveilling people. And are you going to be able in your building to be able to do that? I give full credit to the clinical team here and my senior team who put their heads together to say, how can we run a swabbing? And we wanted to do it immediately. We really wanted to make sure we could give the community some sense of safety and security from a surveillance perspective of COVID, and also to be able to surveil to the ministry how our community is doing around with COVID. And you know, I can say that in the early days of the pandemic, we were running probably 150 cars through the lower part of Fletcher. And what we've created, and I'm really proud of this, the nurses were out in July in the heat in full PPE. We were dedicated, but it wasn't a model that could sustain itself. I thank our community partners, our family health team at Matthew's house. I think Kim's on this evening. Folks like that, we all put our heads together to look at what we could do to surveil for this community and how we could best work together. And it was decided that because of the logistics of running an assessment center, remember there's lab DI, there's swabbing, there's logistics, there's IT, there's what happens if somebody really gets in trouble. You want to be close to the emerge department. We decided to try to work with the footprint we had here on Fletcher. And we designed what the staff now call the hut. The nursing staff are quite pleased with it. It's a winterized and cooled facility. It's a drive-through facility which manages IPAC infection quite well. And to date, if you think about the size of New Tecumseh, being roughly 35, 40,000 people, and the mayor can correct me if he's wrong, we've done over 20,000 plus swabs. That's a huge amount for a small community hospital. Our positivity rate early on was like 2 and 3%, but 2 weeks ago, we were seeing that positivity rate climb to 16%, meaning that of everybody who was tested positive, it had a positivity rate of over 6, almost 1 in 5 folks. So it's an important service that we offer to the community. We've managed to do online booking, and we're quite proud that we continue and will continue. We've increased the hours of our assessment center because of what's happening with the schools, and we will continue to look to provide that service for our community. I think it's a critically and important one, and just another example of how we're pivoting here at Stevenson to make sure we're serving our local community. Next slide, please. You get a sense, people go, well, how busy is that assessment center? Well, we're running upwards of 175 cars we can get through there a day. And you can look on the total swabs on the right-hand column. That'll give you a sense of the amount of people that are coming through that assessment center. And we're seeing that lately, it is full. We are booking full for the day. We're 2 to 3 days out. And we are looking to continue to increase the hours, if so be, if the surveillance needs to improve. And you have our commitment to want to do that for our community. Next slide. You know, on top of that, we've been asked by the ministry, because of the strength of the Stevenson team, to work with our long-term care support. And I give full credit to Carrie Jeffries and Mary Beth Hennon, who have done an amazing job working with Simcoe Manor. We've managed them through their initial outbreak, and we had Royal Victoria Hospital kindly come in, and they did a great job sort of in the first 60 days, but we were asked to continue. And we've managed and helped them with their IPAC assessments. We continue to meet with them regularly. And we've completed IPAC, which is infection prevention measures, at other LTCs in our community. We've also, you know, Dr. Myatt and myself were early on looking at having town halls for our principals when COVID first broke. We've continued to accommodate kids and everybody who wants to come to our assessment center. And for those of you who've had a COVID scare, you know the anxiety that you go through wanting to know the answer. And our assessment center is able to provide that. You're able to go on the portal and get your results in a timely fashion. And the labs are starting to turn around quickly within a 24-hour period for the most part. We also are helping out in specialized congregate settings. So we helped with class with IPAC. Our local class had an outbreak, and so we were wanting to help them. And so Stevenson, I guess I want to leave this community with the impression that we are doing everything we can to make, with a small contingent, a warrior force, to make sure we're doing everything we can for our community through COVID. Next slide, please. So where are we at with redevelopment? So I wanted to give you a sense that I know the community wants to see a new hospital. Our board, everybody wants to see this 1964 facility be improved. But I have to build a bit of a story for you so that you understand the journey to getting a hospital redeveloped. I've said time and time again, and I think Brad and Don's on from MyFM, it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. Getting a capital project of this magnitude is not something that happens overnight. You have to really work both political and community engagement, and you have to really work closely with the ministry in order to make this happen. You know, this slide would have looked a lot different even 10 years ago. But, you know, the government really looks and tries to pay attention about who's your primary catchment. And hopefully your pixels on your computer are okay and it's coming through orange. It's an orangish sort of color. That is the primary catchment of Stevenson that is going to drive this redevelopment. The yellow represents the secondary catchment, and that's part of the data modeling that the ministry looks at to see where are your people coming from. Are you really servicing your local community? And you can see that the second most amount of, we stretch into Mono, Innisfil, we are a little over towards Orangeville. You can see that folks come from all over. And at times we have quite a contingent coming from the Barrie community, part and parcel because of the reputation we've built with our emergency department, which continues to track as one of the second fastest emerges for 74 medium-sized hospitals in the province of Ontario. And I'm really proud of that statistic. Next slide, please. So I presented this to the ministry. I said, where are people coming from? This is where people are coming from. And this is visits to our emergency department. This is not our inpatient data. But for the most part, 50% of the volume we're a new Tecumseh hospital. We service primarily the 6th fastest growing region in the province of Ontario, with ESSA following and Azur-La-Tas right behind it. And you can see that we got some volume from Innisfil, about 6.3%. It's a little higher in our stage. This is our stage 1 slide, and Mono and Malmer follow suit. Next slide, please. So I gotta tell you the story for redevelopment. You know, people always ask me, so when's the shovel going in the ground? And I got to remind them of the journey. Sometimes people digress. People ask me, why aren't we building a greenfield site as a brand new hospital? It would be like what Markham and Royal Victoria Hospital did. They go and they find a piece of property and they build a brand new hospital. Well, I just remind the community that in 2007 and 8, 9, there was a proposal looking at whether or not Stevenson could be a greenfield site. That proposal was rejected. It was rejected by government, and part and parcel because of the data. When I arrived in 2013 as CEO, there was a pre-cap, and there are 6 stages to the planning. I'll take you through that. The pre-cap is really the original test to government to see whether or not the government's prepared to invest in infrastructure healthcare in a facility. And that pre-cap took a year back and forth with the ministry, and it was eventually accepted. I give our board of directors full credit. It wasn't like a green light, it was a maybe. This doesn't constitute a no, but it isn't constitute a yes. You will have to proceed at your own risk. I give full credit to our board who said, we need to do this for our community, and they proceeded. It wasn't until 2018, and it is this current government, the Conservative government, that put through the $500,000 planning grant was announced by the Liberals, but I never saw the money. It was an announcement, and if you recall, it was just before the current provincial election. But the money arrived after there was a change in government with the Conservatives, and essentially over the course of this past summer, I've got the stage 1 permission and another planning grant of $1 million. It arrived in April of this past year, and I received an official approval from the government. This is the very first step in Stevenson's history that we are on the right track. The government is liking the work we're doing, and they're starting to recognize that this project is viable and will start to move forward. So right away in January of this year, the board gave me permission to submit our stage 2. We closed it off, and I'm pleased to say that we've actually had a series of 32 questions back, and we've responded to those questions. Next slide, please. I always put this is not a new slide for many of you who've listened to me. It's the reminder of the marathon we're in order to get a hospital approval and where we're at. Most places don't get beyond the first stop sign, and that's a stage 1 approval. We are now into a stage 2, on the verge of being closed off, and I'll talk a little bit further about our stage 2 work, and then getting ready to go to Treasury Board and to get ready for stage 3, which stage 2 ends the planning. There's no more planning, no more back and forth on functional program or master plan. It's the decisions to start to move through the implementation, design, and construction phase. Next slide, please. You know, when you do a functional program or a master plan, as they call it, you really are looking at where the community is going to be in a blueprint of 10, 15, and 20 years. With that particular population growth, and you have to use the Ministry of Finance population process, along with some tempered triangulation with census data, you start to understand the size of the building you're really going to need. And in stage 1, stage 2, what you're really trying to do is take those projections of how much space you're going to need to have an emergency department, how much space you're going to need to have an OR, and you start to plan what the building's going to look like. So essentially, we need to go from 70,000 square feet, which is the current building we're in, to 171,000 square feet. And the best way we could come up with it, and what the government is particularly impressed with, is our 2-story wraparound design, which has a lot of innovation in it. We wanted to preserve our helipad. It is an important feature here, and we wanted to come, for those of you who've been up and around here, we've never had an optimized flow. And for those who've come for ambulatory appointments here, you know that our parking is stretched beyond belief. So the current design really wanted to triple the parking so that we have plenty of space for folks to come in and out. Next slide, please. So where are we at with our stage 2? So it has been in front of the ministry, and we have battled on and off with the ministry to talk about increasing our operations. We currently want to increase to become a 47-bed hospital. One of the dynamics that's been back and forth with capital is because of COVID. COVID has changed the way the government is thinking about how you build hospitals. So when we put in our stage 1, the benchmark to build and design a hospital was based on 80% single room occupancy and 20% semi-private. The idea that we have here, called ward rooms, 4 people in a room, is gone by the wayside. So we had actually looked at designing in our stage 1, 80% single room and 20% semi-private. But in the course of what COVID has driven and what we're learning, and Humber River is the first hospital to have all single room occupancy. The Vaughan Cortellucci site is now the second hospital in Ontario. Stevenson will be that. We want to make sure everybody has their own room and their own washroom, and it just makes sense from an IPAC perspective. And the government has agreed that that will be the plan going forward from Stevenson. It was a negotiation process going forward. It does require increased nursing staff, operational dollars, and that's a process that we're going to begin to engage in with the ministry. We also really wanted to look at our surgical suite, and Stevenson has dated small infrastructure ORs. We need to modernize our ORs, our 2 ORs. We were looking at a step-down procedure room. A lot of the things that are done in ORs can be done in a step-down room. But with the ministry's help and with the scope of where we're going to be in 20 years, all 3 rooms will be built as full ORs. We may use it as a step-down or an endoscopy suite, for example, but we are planning to, and we have the green light to go ahead and build functional ORs across the board. Next slide, please. The ministry, in a conversation I had with them last week, is fully endorsing our stage 2 work. They see complete alignment between what the capital branch, aka the bureaucrats, want to do, and what Ontario Health sees. Our functional program is solid, and so they had one last set of questions. I thought I would share this. I put them into themes. There were 4 themes that really came out of our close off of our stage 2 work. They wanted some clarification in our clinical services, and we provided that, and it was quite simple to do. We've been at this journey for 5-6 years, so it was easy to clarify some of the clinical services around ambulatory, etc. There is a growing concern here about the amount of Form 1 mental health patients we face here at Stevenson. I'm quite pleased that over the course of my tenure here, we've redesigned our safety room to be able to provide more confidentiality and safety for our mental health patients. And we've been working hard to try to find partnerships with Schedule 1s that will help. The mental health system is a whole other presentation and slide in of itself. And after spending 25 years in psychiatry, I can tell you it's a system that is tremendously underfunded. And we wanted to show that we can manage these folks safely, not only from our staff perspective, but from the patient's perspective as well. A new dynamic that emerged in the feedback from the ministry was the relationship we have with the new Cortellucci Vaughan Hospital, which is open for ICU capacity, but hasn't actually officially opened. And we've had a very frank conversation with the ministry about that. That's not our closest surgical partner to be working with. For those of you who've tried to get off of Major Mac and Jane at rush hour, it's not an easy drive, and it wouldn't make a lot of sense for our patients. But the ministry tested us on that. And then, of course, the last thing that we had to do with the ministry was the design and costing. Because our stage 1 had 80-20 split, as I explained before, moving to 100%, would we be able to still maintain ourselves on the same property? And I'm pleased to say that we are able to do that. Next slide, please. So, where we're at, and I think this is important, is I've had a really good conversation last week alone with Minister Elliott's office. I had a conversation with Kevin Last, the Senior Policy Advisor to Minister Elliott, about where we're at with the P3 market update and where our stage 2 currently sits. He has indicated to us that, and this is kind of big news for us, is that he fully believes over the next calendar year, our project will be going to Treasury Board for approval. That's a big milestone, because once you get approved by the Treasury Board, you have a project that you're moving forward. And what Kevin encouraged me to look at, he says the only risk you run when you go to Treasury Board with a project that has so much great work in it is your local share plan. And the local share plan for a project of this size, the local share plan, meaning the money that our community has to raise in order to get a new hospital, is sitting at around $31 million. And we've probably got about an 18 to 24 month window to really solidify to government that this community is behind this project. Next slide, please. When we did the capital cost update, what is it going to cost to redevelop this hospital? I originally sat at about $160 million ago, but every year construction costs escalate. And for those of you who've had to go to Home Depot or try to go buy something for your home, you'll see that the price of a 2x4 is no longer $3. Some of them are sitting at $9. Well, the construction industry is in the same place. And so our capital cost update as of today sits at $182 million. And the local share, as you can see, is getting close to $31 million. That number will continue to increase until the government approves our project. We want to see an approval so that we can move forward. Next slide, please. The other thing that the government is going to take is they want to see the project phased. and I wanted to be very transparent with our community that phasing a project, we got stages, stage 1, 2, 3, and then we got phases. Phase 1 is the new 2-story wraparound design. It is over 100,000 square feet, and it basically gives us a new emerge and all the ancillary supports that help a high-functioning emerge, your ORs, your lab, DI, and pharmacy, and then, of course, up top are inpatient beds and expanding the parking. Phase 2 is the second phase of the project that really starts looking at the redevelopment of the current building we're in. Our functional program is going to utilize that space. We listened to Capital Branch. We will utilize that space for back office and other such things. Kitchen, cafeteria will remain the same. But we wanted to, that will be the second phase of the project. And you can see that the $31 million local share is broken up 2 different ways. So the cost of the first phase is 23.7 and the second is 7.2 million. Phase 1 construction can be anywhere from 18 months to 24 months. Next slide, please. For those of you who like pictures and want to try to understand what we're trying to do, this is the updated design that we submitted with our stage 2. You'll see that the parking is increased. We are maximizing the 11.8 acres here we have on Fletcher. A lot of gray in that slide, meaning a lot more parking and tiering. And we're opening up the road off of Fletcher. You can see right now where our COVID assessment center is. The plan is really to open that up to create optimized traffic flow for ambulances coming in one way to the ambulance bay. You'll see that the ambulance bay is a 4-bay covered garage. Right now, people have to be unloaded in inclement weather. That will no longer happen. And you can see that we've preserved our heliport. Next slide, please. This really is and it's hard to see it, I know, on your computer screen, but this really is the first part of the new 2-story design, floor 1 of the building. And so the gray up on the right-hand corner is our emerge with our 4-bay ambulance. Those are the 4 little X's you see at the top. That's our ORs onto the one side and our lab, DI, and pharmacy that all support a high-functioning emerge. This will be state-of-the-art kind of system design. Next slide, please. And this is what the government is also excited about. So in that 2-story design, these are all our inpatient beds. These are the 47 beds I've talked about. This is our medical surgical inpatient, along with our obstetrics and our 5-bed high acuity unit. Bringing nursing teams together, for those of you who understand efficiencies, is really important for coverage, for patient care. Getting all the inpatient areas co-located together helps from infection control, creates efficiencies, and as you can see, the design needs to make sure that everybody gets optimal light. One of the things we know about healing and being in hospitals is light is important. You'll see that we designed our high acuity unit with that in mind. Next slide. So that's just the original part of our cafeteria and part of the old design that will be part of our phase 2. You can see that we're expanding our loading dock and expanding some of the logistics in and out of this hospital. For a small hospital, you'd be quite surprised how often we have to have supplies brought in and out, especially in COVID. So I just want to go to the next slide, and I just want to leave you with this in summary. So, I think it's really important the community understand that our stage 2 work is fully aligned with Capital Branch. It's fully aligned with the politicians. It's fully aligned with Ontario Health. The process from the senior policy advisor and the advice we're getting from Capital Branch is that this will be a P3 project and will be under IO. And we're assuming that, but all evidence is indicating that when it goes to Treasury Board, this will be a P3 project. And for those who don't understand P3, it's the public-private partnership that goes on. It's the P3 Infrastructure Ontario update that you've seen released in the media in the planning phase, and more, whether it's a design build or design build finance, we will not know that. But this will be, I'm pretty confident, I've been proven wrong before, but I'm pretty confident this will go as an IO project, which is great for Stevenson and great for a hospital of our size. People will ask me, well, what does that mean then if you go to Treasury Board? Well, it means early works construction can start within the next year. And that's a big undertaking. People always ask, when will shovels go in the ground? Well, we still have to go through putting an RFP out to get our new set of consultants for our stage 3 work. And if it's an IO project, the RFP looks different than if it was a stiff sum project. So we're waiting to get that finalization from government and Treasury Board about how it's going to look. But we're going to start working on that right away. And my consultant and project manager, Paul Clary, has been very clear that we've already begun those discussions with the ministry about how this will look as an IO project, more than likely. Early construction could start within the year. That means we're getting ready to increase our parking, which would be good news for the community. We start building our parking lots, and we tie all the early works construction, the infrastructure that comes before the building. That's your water, your power, your gas. You start prepping the site. The ambulance bay has got to come down. Mary McGill will have to come down in order for us to prepare for the construction of the new build. That's something that I wanted to leave you with. The last thing I'll leave you with is that local share at this time is critical. You as a community can give a real message to Queen's Park that you stand behind this project by donating to our local, our redevelopment project. We want to have 100% raised of dollars. We want to give no doubt to government that this community really wants to see a new infrastructure here, and you can be a big part of that. So by in all the things that are going on, if COVID has not taught us anything, it's the importance of local community healthcare. And you really have an opportunity here to donate and make a difference and help the Stevenson team give you the hospital that this community deserves. And we're there, we're close. Your part is giving to the community. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melody and let her talk from the foundation's perspective. Thank you.
Thanks, Jody. It's always hard to follow you because I think you have such a so much to offer to the community as far as what's going on, and I can recap what's been going on the foundation, but it's not nearly as exciting, I don't think, as everything that the hospital has been accomplishing. Rachel, if you could go to the next slide, please. So I'm going to start out by talking about our journey to healthcare in our community. So, and it's only in the last 5 years that I'm really going to focus on. So in 2017, we had launched the Transforming Stevenson campaign. And at that time, that campaign was an $8 million campaign for our new health information system, as well as our other needs. And we knew redevelopment was coming, but we weren't, we were fundraising for it, but not as actively as we are now. We also, in 2017, were able to announce some of our lead donors in the campaign. So Simcoe County, Honda Canada Foundation, and Nottawasaga Foundation all became transformative gifts for the campaign. Then in 2019, we launched the campaign that we're in now. So the $43 million campaign, which encompasses all the things I just mentioned, but it also includes the local share. We brought it all together to make it easier for everybody to understand, because we know there was a lot of numbers getting thrown around and it could get quite confusing. And then we went from 2019 to 2020 when the pandemic hit, and we had launched the Pandemic Response Fund, and the community came together and raised $500,000 in the first 6 months, and that was to match that Pandemic Response Fund, in addition to all the other generous donations that we received over that year. We also received PPE and donations for staff. There was some meals that were donated and other items. Flowers were dropped off. So really to just boost some morale, and some really nice positive messages that I know Rachel continues to share with the hospital staff as they come in, and it makes a big difference. So the community continues to pull together and support the hospital when it's needed. So April 1st, we just launched our Every Dollar Doubled campaign. And for those of you that may not have heard about it, that's the opportunity to raise another $500,000 by June of this year for the towards critical equipment and other needs of the hospital. So the Morning View Foundation created a matching donations dollar for dollar with the community support. So for every dollar raised, they're going to donate $1 up to $250,000. And the reason they're doing that is because they know with the rapid growth in the populations, the emergency department that now serves close to $40,000 was only built to serve 40,000 people. It was only built to serve 7,000 people. So it's making the need for equipment and technology upgrades more critical as the community grows. And with the pandemic, and that just puts that much more pressure on the hospital and what they need. So we have the Morning View Foundation wanted to meet the growing needs of the community, particularly after the ongoing load has been created by the pandemic. They wanted to really make a difference at the hospital, and they've supported for the past decade, sometimes quietly. Right now, not as much, because they really want to inspire other people to give and to really make a difference to the staff and the care that they're able to provide to everybody in the community. So that brings us to today, where we're raising money for that, but we're continuing to also reach out to a lot of our donors and past donors to talk about just what Jody was talking about, the need to raise funds for redevelopment in a local share. So depending on who we're talking to, some people might be donating right now to one of our other needs, but are making commitments by pledges or a future commitment payment schedule to make the most meaningful gift of their lifetime towards the hospital. And for everybody, that means something different. So we don't like to, put everybody in one lump sum. We have some individual donors that give $25 or $50 a month, and we have others that give, they're able to generously give $50,000 on behalf of their family. So it really takes the entire community to come together for that. Next slide, please. So this is just a list of a few of the partners that we have. There's quite a few there, but we have others as well. So we're sitting at 57% of our campaign goal of $43 million. And we're excited to have a lot of the local community businesses supporting us. So Tim Hortons is going to do their Smile Cookie campaign for us, at least the Alliston location, and we're excited to be able to say that. And the Ferris team has put a challenge out to the other brokers and agents in the community. And McDonald's, of course, still offers the coffee card program, but there's so many others. And it just continues to inspire and evolve into other businesses that are supporting in different ways, whatever makes sense for them and they're capable of doing. Next slide, please. Especially during the pandemic, there's been a lot of creative ways that people have been able to support, even though their businesses have faced the challenges of having to modify and adjust in order to survive as well. So campaign progress. Some of the big things that we've had going on are we just recently had a board recruiting program. So that was to new board members helped to raise the profile of the foundation. We had more applications for that than I think we ever have in the past, more than we had spaces for. So we have some that will be some people joining different committees and some people joining the cabinet. The cabinet is something that we continue to recruit for on an ongoing basis. The cabinet's work is to support the $43 million campaign, but more specifically the redevelopment local share portion of that. So we also have a couple new committees that we've been working on. It's something different for the foundation because we're trying to find new innovative ways to connect with the community. So we have an innovation committee that only began just under a year ago, and it's exciting to have a lot of people, the community, that group come together and look at different ways that the community might be able to support and how we can create new partnerships within the community and what that'll look like. So we're going to have more information coming out of that in the next couple months. And we also plan in the future to create a manufacturing team. So the purpose of that is to find ways to reach out to the different manufacturers in the community and ask for support. We're always looking to our community partners to help make those connections and identify some high net worth individuals and businesses with an affinity to support and ask them to help make those introductions so that we can sit down and meet with people that might not know what's going on at the hospital. Next slide, please. So a few ways that people can help, and I know there was a lot of familiar names and faces on the call today, but there's some new ones as well. So I think obviously probably for some people the easiest way is to make a personal donation or pledge, but others it would be hosting a third-party event or doing some kind of fundraiser on behalf of the foundation. And the foundation will work with each of those groups or those individuals creating those third-party events to help make it as successful as possible. And then from now until June, the Double Your Impact campaign, which is will help bring them much more money into the hospital to help with the equipment and other infrastructure needs that are there. Inspiring others to give. So what that means is if you have a story that you want to share about the hospital, share it. If people have questions or they want to know more about what's going on, they can always reach out to the foundation and we're happy to talk to them. But if you share what you're doing to support the hospital, whatever that looks like for you, or your stories about great care with the community, it helps raise awareness that might not already be there. So that all makes a difference. And then making connections. So talking to friends and colleagues about a gift that you may have made, or encourage them to make a gift, volunteer with the foundation. And then there's also another way that you can make a difference is Jim Wilson has a petition that he's shared for years. So you filling out that petition and sending it in will also make a big difference on the government side of things. So that's just a different way that you can support the redevelopment of the hospital. And from there, I'm going to pass it over to Dr. Ted Vandevis. So we're lucky to have him as one of our cabinet members. He's also the co-chair of our community giving committee. And he really does have a great energy and he's quite inspiring. So I'll pass it over to you, Ted.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melody. And a wonderful presentation, both of you. It's good to see the project moving along. As Jody said, I'm a local kid. I was raised on the Jackson farm, which is on the 9th line of Tecumseh Township. We had a veal farm there, and I went to Banting from the late 60s to the early 70s, and was fortunate to be appointed as the reconstituted board chair of Stevenson from 2007 to 2012. And I see some of our former board members are on the call. I know Darlene for one, and Paul Edmonds as well. There's probably more, but there's still a few of us kicking around. Around 1998, and Darlene will remember this, I had this crazy vision that when I was CEO of our health and safety consulting company, that we would have 0 injuries to any of our 50,000 workers in our industry. And at the time, we were having about 1,200 injuries per year. And I went to the board and I said, you know what, if we don't do anything, we're going to have 1,200 next year, and we're going to have 1,200 year after that, and 1,200 year after that. And so we all came away from a strategy session galvanized around the concept of 0 injuries. And over time, and what we tried to do was to change the culture of the industry to one where 0 injuries was the only acceptable goal. And so over a period of 10 years, the injuries dropped, and the industry was the best or second best performing rate group in the province to begin with, but it still outpaced, with a vision of 0 injuries, it outpaced the rest of the province 2 to 1. So the injury rates came down in Ontario by 5%. Within the electrical industry, they came down every year, 10% year over year. Why do I tell you that? Well, what I'm trying to accomplish with our individual and business giving program is to change the culture of a whole community to one of giving. So looking to get 100% of individuals within this community, we got 73,000 of us, 100% of us making a donation, 100% of all businesses making a donation to the campaign, and that way we can do it. One of the ways that I'm trying to change the culture is, and that's changing it to a culture of one where everybody gives, is through weekly editorials, sharing stories to assist in this cultural shift. And they're coming out weekly now. We're looking at different ways of getting a greater exposure. But if you get a chance, please read them. And they've got a lot of me in them. But what I'm going to try to do as we get further down the campaign, involve people that I can highlight. And so, for example, I had the most wonderful opportunity to talk to Marion Carlton. Now, Marion Carlton, some of you might realize, was the first director of nursing with Stevenson back in 1964. So when the new hospital was built back then, she was also announced as the new director of nursing, and she did that job for a number of years until the last 2 years before she retired. The board had such confidence in her that they made her now what we call the CEO. Back then she was the hospital administrator. But what a lovely, lovely chat. And I feature her in one of these editorials, and just the most spry and bright and lovely and wonderful person. So have a look out for that. I think it's around week 17 or 18 or something like that. So if we get 73,000 individuals, I also know the power of setting goals. And one of the goals we set back in my old life was a goal of 0 injuries. Well, what we've set here is and what we want people to do is to give according to their ability. So I don't want people to give until they hurt. I want people to give until it feels good. But people will say, well, what does that mean? How can all of us give and make a meaningful contribution and we still hit our goal? And so what we've laid out is $100 per person per year for 3 years. And if we do that, we will collectively, and that's an average, we will collectively raise $21.9 million. Now, my wife and I, we feel better off than a lot of people. And so we've increased that amount. And some people will give less. But the main thing is that we've got this thing in our brain that says, okay, we need all of us to give $100 a year per person in my family for each of 3 years. And that translates to 21.9 million. And that's how powerful working together is. Next slide, please. Oh, you're there already. Okay. If 2,700 businesses, and we've identified 2,750 businesses, and I'm sure there are more that are doing a good job of hiding, but we will uncover any rock we can find, and we will find them. But we've identified 2,750 businesses, and what we're looking for there is to contribute an average of $1,000 a year for 5 years, and that will raise another $13.75 million. And so it's just everybody doing a little bit. And we've got contact information for each of those organizations, and we're going to be calling everybody, hopefully within the next year, and at the most outside 2 years. So the idea here is each of us participating, each a little bit, each giving our share, and each giving until we feel good. I've given, I know a lot of you have, 100,000 or 100,000. I haven't given 100,000. 100% of both hospital and foundation boards have given, and now it's the community's opportunity to give. And I think between Jody and Melody and myself, we've made the case, and now we are going to be going in earnest to the community to make this happen.
Thank you, Dr. Ted Vandevis. Melody, did you have anything to close your slide here? Final words?
Just a very quick, because I think I know people want to get to questions and answers, and everybody has, well, maybe know where to go right now. But thank you so much to everybody in the community and on this call, but anybody that might be watching it as well, for all the support that you've provided, not just to the campaign and to the other needs of the hospital, but for everything that you've done over the last year during the pandemic. Everything that has been done has made a difference. So, there's pictures of rocks that were put outside, and I think that was, when that picture went around, I think it made everybody feel really good. And it was a small gesture, but every gesture makes a difference. And it's the same with every donation. So again, thank you so much for everybody that has contributed in whatever way you are able to contribute. And if there is any interest in joining the cabinet or wanting information about that, I'm happy to share that with anybody that wants to reach out to me about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Melody, Dr. Ted, and Jody for your very inspiring and educational presentation tonight. At this point, we're going to start the question and answer portion. So I will just turn off the presentation here. Okay, so I'll start with some pre-submitted questions. I think this one's for Jody. Why isn't the hospital giving COVID-19 vaccines?
Oh, interesting question. So we are giving COVID-19 vaccines, but we've been identified. I think people need to understand, and I see Kim Woodland. Hi, Kim, how are you? There was a bunch of us that actually came together, and the realm of vaccines is really the realm of public health. So we've worked as a local group to try to enable, and Kim at Matthew's house has been able to donate a lot of volunteers that you see over there at the arena for our vaccine clinics. But the hospital has been giving vaccines, and so we've been working with public health to give it to our most high-risk patients and people who have what's called alternative level of care. Those are folks that are in our hospital that no longer need the hospital but can't get back to long-term care or to another designation that is alternative. So we've been vaccinating with public health. We get vaccines here, and so we've been giving it to high-risk populations, and we've been supporting our local public health and trying to run the vaccine clinics for the public. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, thank you, Jody. The next one, I think you've touched on it for sure, but I'll just ask again, just in case, just to get clarity. When do you expect the redevelopment project to get approved for the next stage?
So I think it's going to happen in the next year. I've been told by everybody I've spoken that this will go to Treasury Board within the next year. So, and then our stage 3, it's quite a complicated RFP for the next level of consultants, whether they're architectural design consultants, pending again the direction by IO or how it gets stiff sum. It could take upwards of 6 to 10 months. We're starting to work on that RFP today now with some of the guidance and insight we have. But over the next year, I see us ending stage 2 and being into stage 3 work, stage 3 procurement.
Okay, and one last one for you. I know this is your favorite. When do you anticipate construction to start?
So again, construction meaning what? I always say construction meaning what? Early works, I think I tried to highlight in my presentation that early works can begin within the next year. We can use local contractors and local individual RFP process outside of stage 3 work to do what's called early works construction. That's the building of the roads, the parking, etc. that I've highlighted. If you're looking, and I think, what people are asking me is when will the construction start on the fancy new 2-story wraparound design? I would say 2025 is a very feasible deliverable considering the timelines we're on.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much, Jody. We have one for the foundation now. Can you provide more information about the Morning View Foundation's matching contributions to the hospital and why they chose Stevenson for their contributions?
Absolutely. So the Morning View Foundation matching donations, dollar for dollar, in the communities with the community support. They've given for years, but the reason they give is because they know how important the community hospital is. they live in the community, not full time, but they've had to use the hospital, and they know how much it's meant to them when they've needed to use it. They really want to see the hospital succeed. They've spoken to us for years about redevelopment, and they really want to see the hospital reach its goal of enhanced infrastructure, equipment, and technology. They know that the hospital provides healthcare at a quality that, given the infrastructure of the building, most people don't expect when they come into the hospital, but they receive it, and they know that it's so important to have that close to home. In the past, they've been really impressed by some of the other diagnostic machines and other items that are available for services in the community as well, that not everybody knows about. So those are some of the reasons that brought them in to give. With a rapidly growing population, which I had mentioned previously, but they know how important it is for this to happen now and not several years from now. So they want to do everything that they can. They had said they were pleased to help launch the Every Dollar Doubled campaign, which it will increase the hospital's ability to meet the growing needs of the community, particularly after the ongoing load that has been created by the pandemic. And they're proud support. It's a couple, so they're proud supporters. It's John and Margaret Ross. They're founders of the Morning View Foundation, and over the past decade, they've been dedicated supporters of the hospital, and their gifts have improved nearly every department in the hospital, including the medical surgical unit, diagnostic imaging, and the surgical suite and beyond. So they just really want to inspire the entire community to come together and give what they can. They know that not everybody has the ability to give at the level that they do, but they know that everybody has the ability to do something, and they're willing to match whatever that something looks like.
Okay, perfect. And there's one more for you, Melody. If 30 million is a local share of the redevelopment project, why is the capital campaign a $43 million campaign?
So the $43 million campaign is made up of, back in 2017, when the hospital needed the new health information system, there was a $5 million bill that came with that. So that's part of that, because we knew, despite all these other things going on, we still have to help the hospital pay for the remainder of that. And then the foundation really prides itself in being able to help the hospital with the other critical needs of the hospital. So whether it's equipment or infrastructure or whatever that list looks like each year, we like to be able to support that. And so that's where the difference between the 43 and the 35 sits.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Melody. I don't see any typed questions in the chat function. Does anyone have a question that they'd like to ask? If you want to either type it in the chat function for us, or if there's any comments that you'd like to provide as well, you could do that too. If not, I believe this will conclude our town hall. So thank you very much. Unless anyone does have a question, please ask, and if not, we will certainly adjourn for this evening. Yeah, go ahead, Jody.
Yeah, I just want to thank everybody. I know there's a lot going on in lives, and taking some time to listen to what's going on at your local community hospital is much appreciated. So on behalf of the foundation, the board, Dr. Vandevis, and all of us here, doctors, nurses, and the team here at Stevenson, we wish you good health. Stay home if you can. We're in the we've got a tough to mid-May, but and if you can get your vaccine, the best vaccine is the one in your arm. So don't you get a chance, there's a follow my Twitter feed. There's a great segue on the differences on the 4 vaccines, and all I can say to you is the best vaccine is the one you can get in your arm. Have a great evening.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Right.